Alright, good afternoon everyone. Let's get this training session started. So before we kick off the training, I'd like to have a brief introduction to myself. My name is Cheney and I am a Senior Product Manager for our Hyper-Converged Infrastructure product, which now is named aCloud. And this session will be focused on the disaster recovery solution, and we're going to dive into some deep technical sides of our disaster recovery solution. And in between the training, we will have two polling questions. And I will have a pause at that polling question, and you can fill out the answer for the polling. And after the slides walk through, at last, we will have a Q&A. So if you have any questions, let's leave it to the end of this training session. So without further ado, let's get it started. As we all know, we've introduced the most powerful disaster recovery solution on Sangfor aCloud 5.8.6. And this disaster recovery solution has complemented our capability because before we only had data protection technologies like backup, like CDP, but those technologies are not enough for business protection. Nowadays, business cannot suffer downtime too much, and especially for those mission-critical applications. Most customers have zero data loss tolerance. And before we get deeper into what Sangfor aCloud disaster recovery solution looks like, let's first have a brief background introduction. When you do the disaster recovery solution configuration, there are several factors you need to understand. Sorry, I forgot to show the desktop screen. Let me share the screen. Pass it to me. Sorry guys, we were setting up the screen sharing right away. Audio and share screen. So I believe now everybody can see my desktop screen, right? Without any problems, let's move on. Like I said, we've introduced the most powerful disaster recovery solution on aCloud 5.8.6. And you are able to build a very comprehensive disaster recovery solution based on aCloud platform. And before we dive into the deep technical side of this solution on aCloud, I'd like to throw some background information to you. Because when we do a disaster recovery solution, it's not only a feature or functionality thing. It has a lot of factors involved. The very first one is we need to prioritize business types, because in a data center environment, customers usually have different levels of applications. Here, we've divided applications into 3 levels. The level 1, of course, is the most important one. We call it core business. It's also called type A business. This type of applications such as ERP, finance, order system, they have the very extreme requirements on RPO and RTO. Most of these applications cannot suffer any downtime or any data loss. So for this type of applications, for this type of core business applications, we usually recommend doing disaster recovery solution with minutes of RTO and the second level of RPO, so that customer will have near zero data loss and they can quickly fail over their business in the event of disaster. The second type of business, we call it major business, and it is also called type B business. For this type of business, it's usually focused on improving employees' efficiency and support internal process, such as email, business intelligence, and office automation. And for this type of business, the RPO and RTO range is usually within minutes. They can tolerate minutes of data loss, and they can also tolerate minutes of downtime. But any longer RPO and RTO would not be tolerated. And the last application level we divide here is common business. This is the last level, the lowest priority business type. We also call it type C. And these types of business usually have no big impact on production when failure occurs. Examples are knowledge base, online learning system, testing business, and such. And for these types of business, the RPO RTO is usually required within hours, and usually remote backup solution can satisfy the requirements for those applications protection. And I need to emphasize here that a very good disaster recovery solution must be designed based on business architecture and priority. There's no solution that can suit all applications. So you have to prioritize your business applications first and see which type of disaster recovery solution will suit those applications best. And after that, of course, you need to do the solution sizing. And the minimum RPO and RTO that a disaster recovery solution is able to achieve can be known based on the resource types and technology characteristics on production and the disaster recovery sites. However, there are many other factors that will influence the outcome of your disaster recovery. Network bandwidth, the data increment, and also the storage performance is another factor that will influence your disaster recovery objective. So take a look at the table here. Basically for aCloud disaster recovery, we can provide minimum 1 second RPO and minimum 5 minutes RTO to satisfy most mission critical applications requirements. And for database, usually we will recommend customers use a database focused protection tool. Example like this is Oracle Data Guard. So for customers with Oracle RAC, and they need to have a near zero RPO and minutes level RTO disaster recovery protection, we will recommend customer deploy Oracle Data Guard for the database protection, because the aCloud DR is still focused on the VM level. Okay, so when you replicate the data, it's replicated the VM's image from primary site to the disaster recovery site. But for database is a different. Even though you can recover the VM, it doesn't mean you can recover that database. So for database in clustered configuration, the database protection tool is recommended. And of course, since FIDO 803, aCloud can support VMware integration. We can provide VMware heterogeneous management and also provide backup for VMware VMs. And for this type of disaster recovery solution, we are utilizing the change block tracking technology provided by VMware, and we are integrating our aCloud with the vCenter. And this VMware to aCloud disaster recovery solution is very easy to use, and the minimum RPO can be 10 minutes, and RTO can be as fast as 5 minutes. And the cost is, of course, the lowest when you consider everything. And the highest level of disaster recovery solution is what we call active-active. And active-active disaster recovery is mostly focused on business continuity. For customers who want to deploy this kind of AA disaster recovery solution, They cannot tolerate any downtime and any data loss. The RPO and RTO requirements usually is made to extreme. 0 is the ideal requirement. And currently our aCloud is still active passive disaster recovery solution. That means only primary site is serving your business in the normal situation. Only when primary site is failed, your application, your business will be failed over to the secondary site. But for active disaster recovery, both sides are serving your business. There's no primary side or secondary side. Basically, they are two exactly same sides serving your business. And when one side is down, the business can be seamlessly cut over to the other side to resume your business. And your application data will not be lost. The last one is physical to aCloud. And currently, aCloud alone cannot provide this physical to aCloud backup or disaster recovery solution. For customers who have physical servers with Windows or Linux OS, the recommended disaster recovery solution for them is using a third-party backup or disaster recovery software. Examples are Veritas or Vim, this backup solution that can be installed on the physical servers and provide this data replication. And the disaster recovery management will be elevated to the third-party backup software. And of course, you are in this solution, you are introducing additional layer of disaster recovery management and disaster recovery orchestration and everything. So what aCloud can provide right now is the first two types of DR, aCloud to aCloud active passive disaster recovery solution, and VMware to aCloud active passive disaster recovery solution. And in the end of December this year, we are going to announce our very first active stretched cluster solution. And on that version, we are able to achieve this active stretched cluster across two sites. But of course, there are some limitations. The two sites cannot be too far away. Our first version will be focused on campus active solution. So the polling question 1 is right here, and I'd like to take 30 seconds for you to fill out this polling question, and after that we will move on. This question is around the RPO and RTO requirements for your business. What level of RPO and RTO will you require for your current business? Just select one and we will continue. So this kind of information will also provide some insight for us when we develop our future disaster recovery enhancements. Okay, let's move on. Okay, let's move on. Next, let's take a look at the aCloud to aCloud disaster recovery network architecture. Actually, it's very simple. You can see that both sides are using aCloud as the computing and storage platform, and you just need to connect these two data centers together. And because we are using this local backup and remote disaster recovery solution, so that you can see there's a local backup repository in the production side. So the data will be processed in the production site, and one copy of the backup of the data will be stored in the local backup. After that, the DR module will transfer the backup data, will copy the backup data from site A to site B. And the site B will have VMs running, and those VMs will not serve your business. Only the site A, aCloud platform, is serving your business. Only when site A is down, site B will take over the business and resume your service. Take a deeper look at what the topology will be looking like. It's exactly what this slide shows. So basically, you have your business zone. The business zone, we all know that to create a cloud cluster, there will be 4 types of ports: storage, VXLAN, business, and management. And starting 5.8.5, we can support reuse one switch for business management and VXLAN. Storage, of course, we recommend you deploy a separate network. And on top of that, you will have a core switch zone. And in the core switch zone, you may have SSL VPN for the site connection. And you may have AD for the load balancing. And on the gateway, you will have all those security and bandwidth management functionality at the gateway. One more thing I'd like to mention here is that because we also have one optimization, the product in our security product line that can accelerate your traffic between data centers. For the disaster recovery solution based on aCloud, we can deploy one optimization at the gateway to accelerate the traffic so that you can compress that traffic, compress the data, and transfer the data from site A to site B, saving more bandwidth. Either virtual WANO or physical WANO are supported. And we have this best practice realized in our lab, and the acceleration outcome is pretty satisfying. The next slide, we will talk a little bit deeper into how the aCloud to aCloud DR works. Okay, like I mentioned, we are utilizing this local backup and remote DR mechanism in the DR solution. So very first thing the disaster recovery solution will do is to make a copy of the data in the local backup. So of course we have very strong backup capability on aCloud. For business applications requiring hours level of RPO, customers can use our scheduled backup for the backup, and the backup can be done on hourly, daily, and weekly. And the minimum backup interval is 1 hour. And for customers with mission critical applications, they need to protect that. They need to have an RPO within minutes or even within seconds. Then they can use the continuous data protection feature on our aCloud platform. And that feature will record every I/O. Remember that 5.8.3 will introduce this CDP. And at that time, the I/O log recording interval is 5 seconds. And on our 5.8.6, we push that boundary a little further. So the I/O recording interval is minimized to 1 second. That means every 1 second, you will have an I/O log recorded. And the data will be stored for the last 3 days for you to roll back to any point of time in the latest 3 days. So after the local backup is done, you will have a data copy in the backup repository. And after that, we will do the DR module in the solution will sync the data from site A to site B. And this data sync from production to DR will also have the options for compression and encryption. You can choose to encrypt your data via the transmission. And compression is also doable, but remember that the compression will consume some resources from the CPU. And after the data is replicated to the secondary side, there will be, before you initialize this DR plan, there will be VMs created on the secondary side. And after the data is copied from side A to side B, you are able to see the real-time status of the link of the data transfer and of the RPO compliance for your VMs. And if one of the VMs in the production side is down, you are able to retrieve that VM. You are able to recover that VM from your local backup. You don't have to fail over your business from production to secondary, because retrieving your VM or your file from the local backup repository is much faster and is much less time consuming. And when the production side is down, some failure occurs or some accidents or disaster hit the production side, we are able to do this failover, one-click failover from the primary side to secondary side. And the VMs can have an instant recovery in the event of disaster or planned maintenance. The RTO is usually around 5 to 10 minutes. After you click that failover, the VMs can be booted up right away within 3 minutes, and your business can run as normal within maximum 10 minutes. So it has a fast failover, and the everything, including the DR management, the DR monitoring, and the backup, they are all included and integrated on this single platform. There's no additional component needed. There's no additional management software needed. What you need to do is just activate the license, and you are able to do the disaster recovery solution right away. And there are some highlights for the disaster recovery solution used on Sangfor aCloud 5.8.6. We are able to provide a wide range of RPO options. It ranges from 1 second minimum to 10 seconds and maximum weekly for different types of applications. And we also have the features like continuous backup from breakpoint. So if the network breaks down, the backup may not be fully transferred from primary side to secondary side. When the link is back to normal, we can continue the replication from the breakpoint instead of starting all over again. And this disaster recovery solution on aCloud is extremely easy to use, extremely easy to set up, and very comprehensive with different levels of RPOs for different levels of applications. There are some restrictions on the aCloud to aCloud DR that I'd like to let you guys know. And the very first one is that our disaster recovery solution currently is not supported for peripherals such as GPU and USB devices. That means if your production side, the primary cluster has a GPU or has USB device attached to the cluster, then when it's failed over, you will lose those peripherals. I think this scenario is not that common. And the second one is that we only support the DR for QCOW2 files. If VMs have physical disks attached, like those mapped disks to that VM, the disaster recovery solution on aCloud will not work for them. And when you fail over from primary side to disaster recovery side, the configuration of the the VM specification on the DR side is up to the configuration you done on that secondary side. Because DR, the secondary side is used for a transitory period. It's not used to run your workloads permanently. When your production side is back online, you will fail back, migrate all of your business from secondary site to your primary site again, because your primary site may have stronger specification of hardware, may have better environment of network and everything. So usually, the secondary site will not be as powerful as the main site. And when the aCloud is syncing data inside the qcloud2 virtual disk, data in the RAM or in the cache inside that VM may not be flushed to the qcloud2 virtual disk. In that case, that data will be lost. But usually, that data is not, a priority, because when it's in the RAM, if you're just like in the HA situation, if you have a multiple nodes in a cluster, one node fails, the VM, the data in the VM cache or in the VM RAM in that failed node will of course be lost. That is a common scenario. And the last one is that the VMs recovered in the DR side will have exactly the same IP and MAC information. So you need to make sure when you fail over, your primary site is completely down and the VMs are not communicatable. Because if you have VMs running in production site, in both production site and the secondary site, there will be IP collision and it may affect your business. The next situation we are going to talk about is aCloud to aCloud DR with clustered database, because we all know that lots of customers are using Oracle or Microsoft SQL Server, and they may are using Oracle RAC for database clustering or SQL Server always on clustering, and in that case, the disaster recovery on aCloud may not be fully appropriate for this situation, because like I said, the disaster recovery on aCloud is still focused on the VM level. So if the database is clustered, the database sync will not be detected by the aCloud platform. It's detected by the database. That is why usually for this kind of environment, especially for database VMs running on aCloud with a mapped raw disk, the example is Oracle RAC shared disk, then DataGuard is recommended for this DR solution. aCloud alone will not be able to satisfy the disaster recovery requirement for the database with mapped raw disk. And we're going to touch a little bit more on DataGuard. DataGuard is the database protection tool provided by Oracle, and it can provide a flexible range of protection levels for clustered database. And usually, a customer will choose one of the modes to protect their database applications. And Sangfor aCloud can be serving as the underlying infrastructure to support this clustered DB disaster recovery solution. More details about DataGuard you can find on Oracle official portal, and you can Google DataGuard for more information. We're not going to talk more about DataGuard. The other scenario that we usually encountered in our disaster recovery solution is that most customers are using VMware in their production side, for as the virtualization platform, and they want to have a backup site or a secondary site that they can use as a disaster recovery target for their VMware production environment. And ever since FIDO 803, we can provide this backup capability for VMware environment. And customers who are using VMware, most of them are using this 3-tier architecture with VMware as the server virtualization platform, and they will have shared storage for the for the external storage for the shared storage. In that case, what we can do is we can provide our aCloud platform to be deployed at the secondary side and provide the computing and storage power, and then they can attach their vCenter, connect that vCenter to our aCloud management platform, and we can manage the VMs in the VMware, and we can do the backup for the VMs in the VMware platform. And after the backup is created, it's done in an incremental manner. That means only the first time is a full backup, just like the backup on our own platform, and then the second time and the subsequent backups will be done in incremental manner to save the bandwidth and expedite the backup process. The minimum RPO we can provide for this situation is 10 minutes. That means we can do backup for VMware VMs every 10 minutes. And the VMs that are going to be recovered on aCloud platform will also enjoy the instant recovery. Let's take a deeper look at how VMware to aCloud DR works. So the very first thing, of course, you need to connect these two sides with each other. So you will have vCenter in the production side, and you deploy aCloud and ACMP on the secondary side. And after the connection is established, you are able to do backup for the VMs in VMware, and the backup RPO range can be set on minutes level or hours level or even days level. And after the data is copied from the VMware side to aCloud platform, you are able to do a failover. And that failover, of course, is still focused on the VM level. And it's just like the aCloud to aCloud DR. You will also be able to have the instant recovery, which will result in 5 to 10 minutes quick recovery of your VMs on aCloud platform. And we also provide this migrate back from aCloud to vCenter. So after your VMware environment is back online, you are able to fast fail back all of your applications running on aCloud to VMware. Remember, we introduced this bidirectional migration capability on 5.8.3, and we just enhanced this feature on 5.8.6. So it's included on our ACMP as well. Again, this is all integrated in the platform. You don't have to buy additional backup software. You don't have to use any additional management layer to manage this disaster recovery. Everything is included on Sangfor's aCloud platform, and we also provide this one-click failover and one-click failback. And the DR monitoring also applies to VMware to aCloud DR. So you can see the real-time disaster recovery status of the VMware to aCloud DR. There's only one restriction here, which is if NFS and Windows shared folder are used as backup repository for the VMware virtual machines, then the VMware virtual machines can only be recovered to VMware, because currently aCloud still cannot run VMs on NFS and Windows shared folder. Of course, those restrictions will be lifted when we have new versions, when we have solved those problems. But currently, please take note of these restrictions. Now we are here on the second polling question, which is around the requirement. Which aspect will you care the most for a disaster recovery solution? Please help us feedback what your answer is on this question. And again, your feedback will provide insights for our future product development and solution optimization. Let's give you 10 more seconds to fill out this this survey. All right, let's move on. Like I said, we are going to introduce a version that will have the active stretched cluster capability and provide extreme RPO and RTO for customers' extreme requirements on the mission critical applications. And that version will be available at the end of December. And we are going to call it stretched cluster. That means basically, even though you from this topology you see two aCloud clusters at two data centers, but logically they are one cluster. And the data, the VMs can be running on either of the cluster and take that cluster as the production site for their to serve the business. And the virtual storage is stretched across sites to provide a unified storage pool. So if you have one VM, let's say running on data center A, and the data copy, one copy of, and you configure the data copy to 2, then one copy of the VM's data will be stored on the cluster A, and the other copy will be stored on cluster B, so that when the cluster A is down, the HA, high availability mechanism, will kick in and reboot that VM on cluster B. So the entire process is considered as equivalent to the high availability situation within a cluster, so that the data, of course, will be not lost, and the RTO can be made minimal, as minimum as seconds. And if you have storage, I mean external storage, which can provide this active replication, then aCloud can be served as the computing platform, and the stretched storage will be done on the external storage. And this solution actually have been long viable, because the tricky part is on the storage stretch. It's not on the computing platform. So as long as the storage is stretched across two sites and provide a unified storage pool for both sides, aCloud, of course, the high availability will be kicked in the event of the primary site failure. So the difference between the stretched cluster based on aCloud and stretched cluster based on traditional storage is which platform will provide the storage stretch. In the case 1, the stretched storage is provided by our aCloud, and on case 2, the storage stretching across sites is provided by the external storage. And usually there will be a witness site for the arbitration, just to avoid any split brain situation. So a little deeper look at how the stretched cluster will be working on aCloud. The first one is that you need to have a stretched aCloud, and like I mentioned a little earlier, this active stretched cluster solution in the very first version, we support only campus level active solution. That means these two clusters cannot be located too far away between each other, and the bandwidth, latency, and the bandwidth the bandwidth throughput will also have relatively high requirements, high requirements over the active passive DR. So let's say you have DCA and DCB and they are running in the same campus with a very minimum network latency across each other. Then you can create a stretched cluster using aCloud. And logically, you can consider you have a big cluster across these two sides. And one cluster in each side will be considered as a fault domain. The fault domain will have this anti-affinity policy. That means your VM's data will not be stored within one fault domain. They have to be stored on two different fault domains to avoid fault domain failure. And the third one is that the storage, of course, is stretched across two sides. And because it is stretched, so that the storage pool is considered as a unified pool for the workloads on the VMs. So it's like the VMs will only see one storage pool, and this one storage pool actually is created by the storage pool stretched across these two sides. And of course, the network orchestration, because you will have two sides, and the highlight feature of what you join is what you get will also be available for the stretched cluster. You can do that, what you join is what you get, to easily configure the network for the two sides. And when a host or when the fault domain fails, you will have the HA kick in right away to reboot that VM from the production side to the from side A to side B to resume your business. And if the node within one fault domain is failed, the HA, of course, will reboot that VM within that in another host in the fault domain to restore the compute. And of course, DRS, distributed resource scheduling can be also enabled to make sure that the workloads you are utilizing the two sides evenly. So you don't have a overheat site with too much workload running on that side. So the DRS is able to make sure that they are evenly distributed across four domains. And for applications which can support this active architecture, they can actually achieve a RPO and RTO, a zero RPO and RPO protection. That means they will have two applications running simultaneously and sync information with each other. And if one side is down, the other application on the other cluster will seamlessly take over that business without any failure, without any downtime, and without any data loss. So that is the very extreme protection that the stretched cluster solution can provide for mission-critical applications. So next, let's take a look at some of the frequently asked questions for disaster recovery solution on aCloud. The very first one is, can we use aCloud DR to protect applications running on physical servers? The answer is no. All disaster recovery capabilities are available for aCloud platform only. aCloud to aCloud DR solution can enjoy all the DR features. And some of the DR features are applicable to VMware to aCloud DR. But the physical servers, they will require third-party backup software to build a DR solution with aCloud. So we cannot provide, the DR solution to protect physical servers. If, customers still have physical servers, then it's quite easy. Ask them to migrate those physical servers to aCloud. Then you can enjoy the full set of features provided by aCloud to aCloud disaster recovery. The second question is, how does the license work for disaster recovery on aCloud? I'd like to mention that aCloud, the disaster recovery is a module that is integrated on aCmp. So The DR functionality on aCloud requires ACMP to function. But if customers, that jumps to the third question. Let's get back to the second question. Besides the foundational license, ASV, ASAM, and etc., disaster recovery on aCloud will require ADR and the DRVM license to function. ADR is the DR module, which will include DR for 5 VMs. So the policy is similar to our CDP. And the number of DR required VMs, if the number of the DR required VMs exceed 5, then additional VMs must be licensed by DRVM license. Let's make an example. If customers have 7 virtual machines that running in their production site and they want to protect it with our disaster recovery solution, then the licenses they need to purchase is 1 ADR and 2 DRVM licenses. 1 ADR will cover the DR for 5 VMs, and the rest of 2 DRVM licenses will cover the rest. So they need 1 ADR and 2 DR licenses. And by the way, ADR includes the CDP functionality. So if you buy ADR, you can protect your local applications with CDP, and you can enjoy second level, RPO. The third question is ACMP required for DR? The answer is yes. The DR module actually reside on ACMP. So ACMP must be deployed to realize our DR solution. However, ACMP is not mandatory unless, ACMP license is not mandatory unless customers need to implement multi-tenancy on ACMP. So if customers need to have, the multi-tenancy, the self-service portal, if they need to build a cloud based on our aCloud platform, then ACMP license is needed. Otherwise, if they just need to, run disaster recovery solution, or they need to manage multiple sites with ACMP, then the license, there's no need for license. It's free of charge. The last question is how to calculate the required link bandwidth for DR. Well, this is a relatively complicated question, and there are 2 factors that will, influence the outcome for the link bandwidth. One is your required RPO. The other is business peak hour data increment. So if you have these 2 parameters, then it is quite easy to calculate the required link bandwidth for DR. I forgot to mention that on our disaster recovery solution, we can also provide this link management so that you can restrict the traffic in your link to make sure that the DR traffic will not impact any production traffic that will traverse across over the wire. And for detailed, link bandwidth calculation formula, please refer to our sizing guide for details. Basically, what you need to calculate is that you need to make sure that within the required RPO time window, the business peak hour data increment can be successfully transferred from site A to from primary site to secondary site. All right, let's see if you guys have any questions on the previous content we just introduced. You can also, file your questions in the comment area. If there's no questions, I think let's move to the demo. Okay, I will show you how to configure DR on our platform. And in the meantime, you can also, ask questions in the comment column. Yes? Hello? Yeah, I can hear you. Yes, I will. That is not a problem. Don't worry about the slides. Okay, so let's take a look how DR looks like on our ACMP management platform. Like I said, the disaster recovery will only function when you have ACMP. If you have only aCloud, which is the previous HCI management portal, you will not be able to configure DR. You can only configure CDP and backup. If you need to create a DR plan, ACMP must be installed. But it doesn't require any additional license, okay? This DR functionality can be working on the ACMP without ACMP licensed. So here's the home page. Let's go to Reliability Center. And the Reliability Center will have all the reliability related features on the aCloud, and we are consolidating all those features into this one single pane of glass management so that you can easily find the reliability related features on the Reliability Center. And you can see the Reliability Center provides you a very holistic view of your reliability status on the aCloud, ranging from hardware to platform to VMs. So let's go to disaster recovery and click details. And then you can see here is the configuration page for disaster recovery on aCloud. Usually what you need to do first is that you need to add two sites to the site management page, because you need to at least have two sites for disaster recovery, and define which one is the primary site, which one is the secondary site. And then after that, you need to go to disaster recovery plan and create a DR plan. After you click the create DR plan button, a window will pop up, and then you can create that DR plan right here. What you need to do is input the name, specify the primary site and secondary site. Of course, before that, you need to add the sites to the site management page. And after that, you need to select the VMs you want to apply the DR to. Choose the VMs and specify the RPO. The RPO can be ranging from 1 second to 1 week. And 1 second, of course, is the extreme protection, but it requires also extreme network bandwidth and extreme storage performance to cope with that RPO requirement. Usually for your mission critical applications, maybe minutes of RPO can already satisfy most of the requirements. And of course, you can compress the data during the data transmission. So after you compress the data, the data will be compressed first, and then transfer over the wire to the secondary side. After it's compressed, the bandwidth requirement will be shrinked as well. So the compression ratio for our aCloud platform can be up to 50%. And with Wano, we've done a test in our lab with Wano and compression on aCloud for the DR. Almost like 80 to 90% of the traffic will be reduced. That means you only need to transfer the 10 to 20% traffic, the data, over the link connection. That is a lot save on the bandwidth. And if seconds level or minutes level of RPO is selected, CDP will be implemented. Okay, as you can see, if I choose 2 hours RPO, then I can use the hours of backup or CDP. But if I choose 10 seconds, I can only use CDP as the local backup and offsite DR backup mechanism. And of course, you can also configure the the disaster recovery across sites RPO, and the file retention. Also, the local backup can also be configured right here without any hassle. So very easy and comprehensive. You can see everything is configurable on this single pane of glass management. You don't have to jump to another management layer or go to another vendor's platform to do the disaster recovery for your aCloud platform. It's all integrated and under the single pane of glass management. And after the plan is activated, you can just start the DR plan. And like I showed here, you can actually create multiple disaster recovery plans to protect different levels of applications. Maybe for mission critical applications, I will choose 10 minutes of RPO. And for my relatively lower priority applications, I will choose 2 hours or 1 hour RPO protection. In those cases, the backup and transmission mechanisms are different. And you can have a holistic view of your backup on both primary side and the secondary side. And before you complete the DR plan configuration, you will also need to configure the network for the secondary side, because here in the demo, I have only one site running on aCloud, so I am not able to demonstrate the network configuration part for the DR plan creation. But all in all, it is very easy. It is also utilizing the what you draw is what you get capability provided by Sangfor aCloud, and you can easily manage the network on the aCloud secondary side. So I'd recommend you to put your hands on the disaster recovery solution on aCloud. If you have 2 clusters, you can test the DR capability right away, and you will be impressed how powerful and comprehensive the disaster recovery solution is on aCloud. So that is a very basic walkthrough on the demo for the disaster recovery part. So the best way to experience our platform will always be putting your hands on the demo on the device, on the management portal, and test it out and see how powerful this platform is. So the slides will be sent to you guys at a later stage. And if you are interested in the disaster recovery solution on aCloud, feel free to contact our colleagues in your regions. Or you can drop me an email. My email address is cheney@sangfor.com. And I just send my email address in the comment column, and feel free to drop me an email. And if you have any other inquiries or questions regarding the aCloud or other products, feel free to send us an email to sales@sangfor.com. And also what I'd like to recommend is we have made some videos on the YouTube channel, on Sangfor Technologies channel. You can find them out, and the demo will give you a straightforward understanding of how the DR and how the ACMP works on Sangfor aCloud. Okay. Thank you for your time, and thank you for joining this training session. We are looking forward to seeing you next time. Stay tuned. Thank you.